The pale blue glow of holographic displays cast eerie shadows across the faces of the Galactic Alliance representatives. The circular chamber of the Nexus station buzzed with a multitude of languages as delegates from 100 worlds discussed trade agreements, scientific discoveries, and the occasional territorial dispute. Ambassador Thex of the Lorian Confederation was mid-sentence when the emergency broadcast cut through all communications. "Who help us SOS Valora colony under attack. Unknown hostiles. Casualties mounting. Help us." The message repeated 3 times before silence fell across the chamber. The delegates exchanged worried glances. Valora was a peaceful agricultural colony on the outer rim, populated mostly by Alluvians, a gentle race known for their agricultural skills and pacifist philosophy. High Counselor Zara, the eldest member of the Alliance Council, stood from her ornate chair. Her translucent skin shimmered under the lights as she addressed the assembly. "This is most disturbing. Valora lies beyond our immediate defense perimeter. The nearest peacekeeping force would take at least 7 cycles to reach them." Ambassador Krell of the Taurian Empire snorted, the sound amplified by his breathing apparatus. "By then, there will be nothing left to save." "Perhaps," said Ambassador Thex, his 6 eyes blinking in sequence, "we should consider alternative measures." The chamber fell silent again. Everyone knew what he meant. "You cannot be serious," said Ambassador Lorella of the Phobian Alliance, her feathers bristling. "They are unpredictable, violent, barely civilized. They are also the closest military force to Valora," Thex interrupted. "And they have proven themselves capable in combat situations." High Counselor Zara sighed, a sound like wind through crystal. "Contact Earth. Tell them we require their Deathworlders." Luders. Colonel Mara Kent stood at the viewport of the United Earth Defense Force headquarters, watching the bustling activity of New Geneva below. Earth's capital city gleamed in the afternoon sun, a testament to humanity's resilience and determination. 2 centuries ago, mankind had made first contact with the Galactic Alliance, only to discover they were considered dangerous curiosities, creatures from a death world whose very biology made them uniquely suited for violence. Earth's higher gravity, diverse and often hostile environment, aggressive microbes, and evolutionary history had produced humans with denser bones, stronger muscles, efficient immune systems, and heightened survival instincts compared to the majority of sentient species. What humans considered normal, their ability to endure pain, heal from injuries, fight through exhaustion, and even their capacity for violence when threatened, was viewed with a mixture of fear and fascination by the rest of the Alliance. But those same traits made humans exceptionally effective in crisis situations. Mara's reflection stared back at her from the reinforced glass. Dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun, sharp green eyes, and the faint scar that ran from her right temple to her jaw, a souvenir from a skirmish with pirates in the city sector. At 38, she had spent nearly half her life in service, working her way up through the ranks to command the UEDF's elite response team. The Wraiths. The soft chime of her communication device broke her reverie. "Colonel Kent," came the voice of her executive officer, Commander Reed. "Priority message from Alliance HQ. They're requesting immediate intervention on Valora. SOS received 90 minutes ago, unknown hostiles attacking the colony." Mara frowned. The Alliance rarely requested human assistance unless the situation was dire. "Alert the team. Briefing in 10 minutes. And Reed?" "Yes, Colonel." "Tell them to pack for hostile environmental conditions. Valora's atmosphere is methane-rich." "Understood." Mara turned away from the window, her mind already running through tactical scenarios. The Wraiths were Earth's finest, a small but lethal force of 12 specialists. each chosen for their unique skills and ability to function in extreme conditions. If the Alliance was calling them in, the situation on Valora was worse than they were letting on. The briefing room was already full when Mara arrived. 10 men and women in standard-issue gray uniforms stood at attention. Reed, a former Marine with a reputation for calm under fire, nodded to her from beside the holographic display. "At ease," Mara said, and the team relaxed slightly. "We've received a distress call from Valora, an agricultural colony in the Orion Spur. The Alliance has requested our immediate deployment." She activated the display, showing a rotating image of Valora, a small, bluish planet with 2 moons. Valora is primarily inhabited by alluvians, a peaceful species with limited defensive capabilities. Approximately 2 hours ago, they sent out an SOS reporting an attack by unknown hostiles. Communications have been sporadic since. Lena Torres, the team's tech specialist, raised her hand. Her dark eyes were already scanning the data scrolling beside the planet's image. "Any intel on the attackers?" "Minimal," Mara replied. "The few transmissions we've intercepted describe shadows and demons, nothing concrete. It sounds like they're either cloaking or moving too fast for the alluvians to track," said Sergeant Decker, the team's heavy weapons expert. His massive frame dwarfed the chair he sat in. "That's our working theory," Mara agreed. "The Alliance has no military assets within 7 cycles, about 18 Earth days, of Valora. We can be there in 20 hours using the new jump drive." "Why us?" The question came from Lieutenant Kai Chen, their infiltration specialist. His face remained impassive, but Mara knew he was voicing what they all wondered. "The Alliance specifically requested the Wraiths. They cited our unique capabilities," Mara said with a thin smile. It was a polite way of saying they needed humans' natural predatory instincts and combat effectiveness. "In other words," Reed added dryly, "they need some Deathworlders to do their dirty work again." A few chuckles rippled through the room, but they held an edge of bitterness. Despite Earth's membership in the Alliance, humans were still often viewed with suspicion, tolerated for their usefulness in crises but kept at arm's length otherwise. "Whatever their reasons," Mara said firmly, "there are innocent lives at stake. The Defender will be ready for launch in 1 hour. Pack for a minimum 5-day deployment, full combat loadout plus environmental gear. Dismissed." As the team filed out, Reed remained behind. "You didn't tell them about the transmission." Mara's jaw tightened. "They don't need to hear the screaming. Reed, not yet." He nodded. "Fair enough, but there's something else you should know. The Alliance is sending an observer." "What? Since when do we take babysitters on combat missions?" "It's since now, apparently. Ambassador Thex's aide, Nerith. He'll be waiting at the landing bay." Mara suppressed a curse. "Perfect. Just what we need. Someone looking over our shoulders while we try to save their people." Reed shrugged. "Politics, Colonel. Can't shoot our way out of that one." "No," Mara said grimly. "But I can make sure it doesn't interfere with the mission. Get the team ready. I'll deal with our guest." The Defender was a marvel of human engineering combined with Alliance technology. Sleek, fast, and heavily armed despite its relatively small size. Designed specifically for rapid response missions, it could accommodate the 12-person Wraith team plus a small complement of support staff. Mara found Nerith waiting beside the ship, looking distinctly uncomfortable. The Lorian was tall and slender, with 6 eyes arranged in a horizontal line across his face and skin that shimmered with an iridescent quality. He wore the formal diplomatic attire of his people, flowing robes in blues and greens that seemed to move even when he stood still. "I'm Colonel Kent," he said, bowing slightly. His voice had the musical quality typical of Lorians. I am Nerith, third attaché to Ambassador Thex. I have been assigned to observe and report on this mission. Mara maintained a neutral expression. Mr. Nerith, while I appreciate the Alliance's interest, this is likely to be a dangerous operation. My team is trained for these conditions. You are not. Nevertheless, my presence is a condition of Alliance approval for this intervention. Nerith replied smoothly. I assure you, I will not interfere with your operations. See that you don't, Mara said curtly. We launch in 20 minutes. Find Lieutenant Torres. She'll show you where to stow your gear. As Nerith moved away, Reed approached. Diplomatic as always, he commented with a raised eyebrow. Mara ignored the jab. What's the status on the team? All aboard and ready. Decker's complaining about the weight restrictions on ammunition again. Tell him if he wants more bullets, he can leave his snacks behind. Reed grinned. Already did. He's reconsidering his priorities. A technician approached, handing Mara a data pad. Final mission parameters from command. Colonel, they've authorized full tactical discretion. Mara scanned the document, noting with satisfaction that she would have complete operational control once they reached Valora. Good. Tell the bridge I'll be up in 5. As Reed departed, Mara took a moment to center herself. This mission felt different somehow. The Alliance rarely requested human intervention unless all other options were exhausted. For them to call in the Wraiths so quickly suggested the situation was even worse than they were admitting. She pushed the thought aside. Whatever awaited them on Valora, her team would be ready. The jump to Valora took 18 hours. The Defender's engines hummed with barely contained power as the ship tore through the fabric of space, creating a shortcut through the void. Inside, the Wraiths used the time to prepare. Mara found Lena in the ship's communication center, surrounded by holographic displays showing fragmented transmissions from Valora. Anything useful? Mara asked, sliding into the seat beside her. Lena's fingers danced across the interface. Maybe. I've been analyzing the pattern of attacks. They're not random. She pulled up a map of Valora's main settlement. See these points? The attackers hit the communication center first, then power distribution, then water purification. They knew exactly where to strike to maximize chaos while minimizing their own effort. Mara frowned. That's not the behavior of raiders or pirates. That's tactical precision. Exactly, whoever these shadows are, they're highly organized and well-informed about Valora's infrastructure. An inside job. Lena shook her head. I don't think so. The Alluvians are genuinely terrified. Listen to this. She played a fragmented audio recording. A voice, trembling with fear, spoke rapidly. They came through the walls, just appeared. Weapons we've never seen. They're not, can't be. The transmission dissolved into static. That's the last clear communication we received, Lena said grimly. 10 hours ago. Mara leaned back, processing the information. Keep at it. If you find anything else, bring it to me immediately. In the armory, Decker and Specialist Vega were checking weapons. The room smelled of gun oil and ozone from the energy weapons. Colonel, Decker acknowledged with a nod. Just making sure everything's combat ready. Mara picked up one of the pulse rifles, checking its weight and balance. What's your assessment, Sergeant? Decker exchanged a glance with Vega. Without knowing exactly what we're up against, we're preparing for worst-case scenarios, standard kinetic weapons, pulse rifles for energy shielding, and a few EMP grenades in case we're dealing with drones or mechanized units. Good. And the environmental gear? Triple-checked, Vega replied. Valora's atmosphere won't kill us instantly, but the methane content is high enough to cause problems with prolonged exposure. The suits should give us 12 hours before we need to swap air canisters. Mara nodded, satisfied. We'll establish a secure base at the landing site, rotating teams for recon and rescue operations. What about the Lorian? Decker asked, not bothering to hide his disdain. Mr. Nareth will remain on the ship unless the situation is deemed safe enough for observation. Mara said firmly. This is a rescue operation, not a field trip. In the mess hall, she found Reed sharing a meal with Dr. Elias Chen, the team's medical officer, and specialists Jackson and Novak, their reconnaissance experts. Join us, Colonel, Reed offered, pushing out a chair with his foot. Mara sat, accepting the coffee that Jackson slid toward her. How's morale? Focused, Reed replied. Everyone knows the stakes. Dr. Chen looked up from his tablet. I've been reviewing what little we know about alluvian physiology. Their cellular structure is fascinating, almost plant-like in some respects. They photosynthesize to supplement their nutrition. Will that affect treatment protocols if we find injured colonists? Mara asked. Significantly, Chen confirmed. They're extremely sensitive to certain compounds that are harmless to humans. I've adjusted our medical kits accordingly. Novak, a former wilderness survival expert with a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow, leaned forward. What's the extraction plan if things go sideways? The Defender will remain in low orbit, Mara explained. If we need emergency extraction, we have 2 shuttles with stealth capabilities. Worst case, we fall back to the colony's central complex and hold position until reinforcements arrive. Which would be when exactly? Jackson asked, her voice carefully neutral. 18 days minimum, Mara admitted. We're on our own out there. A silence fell over the table as the reality of their situation sank in. Get some rest, Mara finally said, standing. We drop in 6 hours. The descent to Valora was rough. Atmospheric turbulence buffeted the Defender as it broke through the cloud layer, the ship's stabilizers working overtime to maintain control. Mara stood on the bridge, watching as the planet's surface came into view. Valora was predominantly covered in swampland and dense vegetation, with scattered highlands where the colonists had established their settlements. The main colony, New Haven, was built on a plateau overlooking a vast marshland. Scan for life signs, Mara ordered. The tactical officer, Lieutenant Kane, manipulated the controls. Scattered readings throughout the colony. Population should be around 5,000, but I'm only detecting maybe 1,000 active signatures. What about the hostiles? Kane frowned. That's odd. I'm not detecting any non-alluvian life forms. Wait. He adjusted the scanner. There's something interfering with our sensors. Localized energy distortions throughout the colony. Can you clean it up? He's working on it, but whatever it is, it's like nothing I've seen before. Nareth had somehow materialized beside Mara without her noticing. May I? He asked, gesturing to the scanner readouts. After a moment's hesitation, Mara nodded. The Lorian studied the displays, his 6 eyes blinking in that unsettling sequential pattern. These energy signatures, they resemble old precursor technology. Precursors, Mara asked sharply. An ancient civilization that disappeared millennia ago. Nareth explained. They left behind artifacts and ruins throughout the galaxy. Most are dormant or depleted, but occasionally... Occasionally what? Nareth looked troubled. Occasionally they activate, no one knows why. Mara turned to Reed. Did the Alliance mention anything about precursor artifacts on Valora? Not a word, Reed confirmed, his expression darkening. Is there something you'd like to share with us, Mr. Nareth? Mara asked, her voice dangerously calm. The Lorian's skin rippled, a sign of discomfort. I was not briefed on any specific threats. But the Alliance has been monitoring unusual energy readings in this sector for several months. And you didn't think this information might be relevant to our mission? Reed demanded. I am merely an observer, Nerith replied stiffly. I share what I know when it becomes pertinent. Mara stepped closer to the Lorian, using her slightly superior height to full advantage. Let me make something perfectly clear. Mr. Nerith, on this ship and on this mission, anything that might affect the safety of my team or the success of our operation is pertinent. If you're withholding information, you're endangering lives. Nerith's skin flickered with colors, embarrassment, possibly, or anxiety. I understand, Colonel. I will share any insights I have. Good. Mara turned back to the tactical display. Set us down 2 kilometers east of the main settlement. We'll approach on foot, less chance of detection that way. Yes, Colonel. Kane acknowledged, already adjusting their descent vector. As the others prepared for landing, Mara pulled Reed aside. I want you to keep an eye on our observer. I don't trust the Alliance's sudden interest in human involvement, and I definitely don't trust his convenient knowledge about precursor technology. Reed nodded grimly. You think they knew what was happening on Valora before they called us in? I think, Mara said carefully, that we're not getting the full picture, and I don't like walking into situations blind. Understood. I'll stick to him like glue. Mara gazed out at the approaching landscape of Valora, her instincts screaming that they were heading into something far more complex than a simple rescue mission. The air of Valora hit Mara like a physical force when she stepped out of the Defender. Even through her environmental suit, she could feel the heaviness of it, humid, thick with organic compounds, and tinged with the sharp smell of methane. The sky above was a strange greenish blue, clouded with swirling vapor that occasionally flashed with electrical discharges. Atmospheric sensors show breathable oxygen levels but high methane concentration, reported Lena, checking her wrist display. Suits recommended but not mandatory for short exposure. Keep them on for now, Mara ordered. No unnecessary risks. The landing site was a relatively flat area covered in vegetation that resembled moss but in vibrant purples and blues. The plants reacted to their footsteps, curling away and then slowly unfurling once they passed. Mara surveyed the team. They had divided into 3 squads, Alpha, led by herself with Lena, Dr. Chen, and Specialist Jackson, Beta, under Reed's command with Decker and Specialists Vega and Chen, and Gamma, the recon team consisting of Novak, Kane, and 2 other specialists. Each group was equipped for their specific role in the mission. The Gamma team advanced to the ridge and establish an observation post, Mara instructed. Beta, secure the perimeter around the Defender. Alpha, with me. We're going to make a preliminary sweep toward the colony. Nerith hovered uncertainly between groups. Mara pointed to the ship. You stay aboard until we've secured the area. The Lorian looked as if he might protest, but then thought better of it. As you wish, Colonel. The teams dispersed to their assignments. Alpha Squad moved out in standard formation, weapons ready but not raised, a balance between caution and aggression. As they approached the edge of the landing area, the landscape changed. The moss-like growth gave way to taller vegetation, strange, twisting stalks topped with bulbous structures that emitted faint luminescence. A bioluminescent plant life, Dr. Chen observed, pausing to scan one of the specimens. Fascinating adaptation to the limited sunlight that penetrates the atmosphere. Doctor, Mara reminded him gently, we're not here for botanical research. Chen straightened, looking slightly embarrassed. Of course, Colonel. But understanding the environment could provide valuable context for movement. 2 o'clock. Jackson interrupted, her rifle instantly at the ready. The team froze, scanning the direction she had indicated. For a moment, Mara saw nothing. Then a slight distortion in the air, like heat waves rising from pavement, caught her eye. Hold fire, she ordered softly. Lena, can you get a reading? Lena adjusted her scanner. Energy signature, definitely artificial, similar to the distortions we detected from orbit. The distortion moved, weaving between the luminescent stalks. It seemed to pause, as if studying them, before continuing on toward the colony. Should we pursue? Jackson asked. Mara considered the options. No. Our priority is the colonists. But log the coordinates and signature pattern. If we encounter more of these, whatever they are, I want to know if they're the same entity. They continued their advance, moving carefully through the alien landscape. The distortion had disappeared, but Mara couldn't shake the feeling they were being watched. As they crested a small rise, the colony of New Haven came into view. From this distance, it appeared intact, a collection of dome-shaped structures connected by elevated walkways, surrounded by cultivated fields of what looked like blue wheat. But there was no movement, no sign of activity. Life signs? Mara asked. Lena consulted her scanner. Scattered, concentrated in the central dome and what appears to be a storage facility to the east. No movement patterns that would indicate normal activity. They're hiding, Jackson suggested, or trapped. Or both, Mara agreed, and she activated her comm. Gamma team report. Novak's voice came through clearly. Colonel, we've established the OP on the northwest ridge. Clear line of sight to the colony. No visible hostiles, but we're picking up those same energy distortions. They seem to be patrolling the perimeter of the settlement. How many? Hard to say. The signatures keep fading in and out. Best guess, between 8 and 12. Mara processed this information. Any sign of casualties? A negative visual confirmation, but there are anomalies in some of the outer structures. Dark patches that don't match the architecture. Understood. Maintain position and continue monitoring. Reed, what's your status? Perimeter secure, Reed replied. The Defender's sensors are having trouble with those energy signatures, but we've established a defensive line. Nerith is getting antsy. Keeps asking to join you. Negative. He stays put until we know what we're dealing with. Mara turned to her team. We'll approach the colony from the east, using that grove of tall stalks for cover. Our objective is to make contact with survivors and assess the situation. Non-lethal response unless directly threatened. Clear? Be clear, the team responded in unison. As they moved out, Dr. Chen fell in beside Mara. Colonel, I've been analyzing the atmospheric composition more carefully. There's something odd about it. I define odd, Doctor. The methane levels are fluctuating in a non-random pattern. It's almost as if... As if what? Chen looked troubled. As if it's being manipulated, consumed or produced in cycles that don't match natural biological processes. Mara frowned. Could it be related to the energy distortions? Possibly. I'd need more data to be certain. Keep monitoring it. If these fluctuations could pose a threat to the team or the colonists, I want to know immediately. They reached the edge of the luminescent grove, now just half a kilometer from the easternmost structures of New Haven. From this closer vantage point, the damage to the colony was more apparent. Several of the smaller domes had collapsed sections, and one of the elevated walkways had been severed, hanging uselessly between buildings. Lena, can you access the colony's communication system from here? Mara asked. I can try, Lena replied, already working on her portable comm unit. If their systems are still online, I might be able to patch in. While Lena worked, Mara surveyed the colony through her binoculars. The dark patches Novak had reported were visible now, sections of the domes that seemed to have been altered somehow, The material looked melted and reformed into strange, asymmetrical patterns that didn't match the clean, precise architecture of the rest of the structures. "I've got something," Lena announced. "It's weak, but there's an emergency channel still operating. Can you send a message?" Attempting now. Lena activated the comm. "This is Lieutenant Torres of the United Earth Defense Force. We are responding to your distress call. If anyone can hear this, please acknowledge." Static crackled over the channel for several seconds. Then, faintly, a voice responded. "Hello? Are you real? Are you really here?" The voice was high-pitched and trembling, an Illuvian clearly terrified. "Yes, we're real," Lena replied gently. "We're here to help. Who am I speaking with?" "Merrill. I'm Merrill, agricultural supervisor. We're in the Central Dome. Most of us that are left, the shadows, they come and go, take people, change things." "How many survivors are with you, Merrill?" Mara asked, taking over the comm. Maybe 300, I don't know anymore. Many injured. The shadows took the medical center first. Our healers." "We have medical personnel," Mara assured him. "We're going to come to you. Is there a safe way to approach the Central Dome?" There was a pause, then, "The maintenance tunnels, under the walkways. The shadows don't use them. Too small. Maybe." "Good, we'll use those. Hold tight. Merrill, help is coming." As she ended the transmission, Mara turned to her team. "Change of plans. We need to find an entrance to these maintenance tunnels." "There." Jackson pointed to a small structure near the edge of the fields. "Looks like an access point." Mara activated her comm again. "Reed, we've made contact with survivors. Approximately 300 in the Central Dome. We're proceeding via maintenance tunnels. I want Beta Team to circle around to the western edge of the colony. Create a diversion if necessary to draw attention away from our approach." "Understood," Reed replied. "What about Gamma Team?" "They stay in position. We need those eyes on the perimeter." Mara hesitated, then added, "And Reed, if those energy distortions get near you, don't engage unless absolutely necessary. We still don't know what we're dealing with." "A copy that. Be careful in there, Colonel." Mara signaled her team forward. As they crossed the open ground between the grove and the access point, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something far more complex than a simple rescue mission. The Alliance's reluctance to provide details, Nereth's convenient knowledge of precursor technology, the strange energy distortions that defied their sensors. It all pointed to something the Alliance had known about but chosen not to share. Whatever was happening on Valora, Mara was determined to get the truth. But first, they had to save the survivors. The maintenance tunnels were cramped, dimly lit conduits that ran beneath the elevated walkways connecting New Haven's domes. Designed for Illuvian maintenance workers. They were barely tall enough for the humans to traverse in a hunched position. The air was stale and heavy with the smell of organic lubricants and the faint, sweet odor that seemed to emanate from all Illuvian technology. Mara led the way, her rifle slung across her back to avoid catching on the narrow walls. Behind her, Lena maintained a connection to the colony's systems, using it to navigate the labyrinthine network of tunnels. Dr. Chen and Jackson brought up the rear, the doctor occasionally pausing to examine the strange, translucent conduits that lined the tunnel walls. "Fascinating," he murmured at one point. "These appear to be bioengineered, living technology." "Doctor," Mara warned for the second time. Yes, I know. Not a research expedition," Chen replied, but his eyes remained fixed on the conduits until they turned a corner. They had been moving for nearly 20 minutes when Lena suddenly raised a hand, signaling them to stop. "I'm picking up movement above us," she whispered, checking her scanner. one of those energy signatures, directly overhead. The team froze, weapons ready. Mara could hear nothing beyond the soft hum of the conduits, but she trusted Lena's equipment. After a tense minute, Lena nodded. "It's moving away." "How much farther to the central dome?" Mara asked. "About 200 meters, Lena replied. "There should be an access point just ahead that will take us up into the maintenance level of the dome itself." They continued forward, moving more cautiously now. The tunnel began to slope upward, and soon they reached a circular hatch set into the ceiling. A simple mechanical lever seemed to be the only locking mechanism. "This must be it," Mara said. "Jackson, take point. Lena, contact Merrill and let him know we're about to enter the dome." While Lena established communication, Mara turned to Dr. Chen. "Once we're inside, your priority is assessing the medical situation. I want to know how many injured, what kind of treatment they need, and what supplies we should bring in from the Defender." Chen nodded, his expression solemn. "Understood, Colonel." Lena looked up from her comm. "Merrill says they'll have someone waiting at the access point. The recognition signal is 2 short flashes. Pause, then 1 long flash. Jackson, you have the light," Mara instructed. The specialist nodded and positioned herself below the hatch, her sidearm ready in one hand while the other gripped the lever. At Mara's signal, she pulled the lever and pushed the hatch upward. The hatch swung open smoothly, revealing a dimly lit space above. Jackson quickly produced a small flashlight and gave the signal. 2 short flashes. Pause. 1 long flash. After a moment, an answering light flashed the same pattern. Jackson pulled herself up through the hatch, scanning the area before signaling the all clear. The rest of the team followed, emerging into what appeared to be a storage room filled with containers of various sizes. Standing by the door was an Illuvian, tall and slender with pale blue skin that seemed to pulse faintly with an internal light. Like all Illuvians, it had no discernible facial features except for 3 horizontal slits where eyes might be on a human. "You came," the Illuvian said, its voice creating the strange harmonic effect typical of its species, as if multiple voices were speaking in perfect unison. "Merrill said humans would come, but many did not believe." "I'm Colonel Mara Kent." Mara introduced herself, keeping her voice low. "This is my team. We're here to help." "I am Talib, Assistant Agricultural Supervisor," the Illuvian replied with a slight bow. "Merrill awaits you in the communal center. Please follow me." Talib led them through a series of corridors that showed signs of hasty barricades having been erected and then moved. Makeshift weapons, farming tools mostly, lay discarded in corners. The few Illuvians they passed pressed themselves against the walls, their skin pulsing rapidly in what Mara recognized as their expression of fear or anxiety. "When did the attacks begin?" Mara asked as they walked. 7 cycles ago, Talib replied. "It was during the harvest festival. Most of the colony was gathered in the fields when the shadows appeared. At first, we thought they were some atmospheric phenomenon. The methane storms sometimes create strange lights, but then they solidified, somehow. Took form." "What kind of form?" Talib's skin rippled. "It is difficult to describe. They moved like liquid but had structure. They passed through solid matter as if it were not there, and when they touched our people..." The Illuvian paused, clearly distressed. "When they touched our people, they changed them." "Changed them how?" Dr. Chen asked sharply. "Some disappeared entirely. Others became like the shadows themselves, not quite solid, not quite there. A few were transformed physically, mutated." Talib's harmonics quavered. "We tried to fight, but our weapons passed through them. We tried to communicate, but they gave no response. In the end, we could only run and hide. They reached a set of large double doors. 2 Illuvians stood guard, holding what appeared to be modified agricultural tools. They stepped aside as Talib approached, their skin pulsing in recognition. Beyond the doors lay the communal center, a vast open space that normally would have been used for gatherings and celebrations. Now it was a refugee camp. Hundreds of Illuvians were crowded into the space, many lying on makeshift bedding, others huddled in groups. The air was thick with the sweet floral scent that Illuvians emitted when stressed. In the center of the room stood a slightly taller Illuvian with skin that shimmered with a deeper blue than the others. It turned as they entered, the horizontal slits widening slightly. "Merrill," Talib announced, "the humans have arrived." Merrill approached, stopping at a respectful distance. "Colonel Kent, your voice sounded different over the communication device." "It's the translation matrix," Mara explained. "It works better in person." She glanced around the room, taking in the situation. Many of the Illuvians were clearly injured, their normally smooth skin marred by dark patches or strange protrusions. Some seemed to be partially transparent, as if they were fading away. "Dr. Chen," she said quietly, "begin your assessment." Chen nodded and moved toward the nearest group of injured Illuvians, his medical scanner already in hand. "Merrill," Mara continued, "I need to understand exactly what we're facing. These shadows, how many are there? Do they have any observable patterns or vulnerabilities?" The Illuvian's skin pulsed slowly, their equivalent of a sigh. "We have counted at least 15 distinct entities, but they move so quickly and can divide and recombine, so it is difficult to be certain. They seem most active during the warmer hours and retreat somewhat when temperatures drop. As for vulnerabilities..." Merrill's harmonics shifted to a lower register. "We discovered by accident that intense ultraviolet light causes them discomfort. They avoid it, but we had only one UV emitter in the agricultural testing lab, and its power source was depleted 2 cycles ago." Lena, who had been scanning the room with her equipment, looked up sharply. "Colonel, I'm detecting one of those energy signatures. It's faint, but it's definitely inside the dome." Mara's hand went to her weapon. "Where?" Lena turned slowly, the scanner sweeping the room. It's moving, circling the perimeter of the room." The Illuvians nearest to them began to pulse rapidly, their fear palpable. "Can it breach this room?" Mara demanded. "The communal center is protected," Merrill explained. "We discovered they cannot pass through certain alloys used in our most important structures. This room is lined with nevidium, a rare metal we use for precision agricultural tools. So we're safe here. For now." Merrill's harmonics wavered. "But our food supplies are limited, and we have many wounded. We cannot stay indefinitely." Dr. Chen approached, his expression grave. "Colonel, I've completed a preliminary assessment. There are approximately 80 Illuvians with serious injuries, most of which appear to be some form of molecular destabilization. Their cellular structure is being altered at a fundamental level. Can you treat them?" Chen hesitated. "I don't know. This is beyond any medical condition I've ever encountered. It's as if their very atomic structure is being rewritten. I can stabilize the most critical cases with our emergency medical kit, but for true treatment, I'd need to understand what's causing these changes." Mara turned back to Merrill. "You mentioned the shadows changed people. Have any of those who were changed communicated with you afterward? Given any indication of what's happening to them?" "A few tried," Merrill said softly. "Their voices were wrong, distorted. They spoke of joining and ascension and the pattern. We couldn't understand much of it. They seemed in pain, but also ecstatic. Then they would fade away or become fully shadow. Lena had been monitoring her scanner throughout the conversation. The energy signature is retreating, moving away from the communal center. Mara activated her comm. Read, status report. We've reached the western perimeter. Reed's voice came through, slightly distorted. Encountered 2 of those energy distortions. They seem to be sampling the environment, taking pieces of plants, soil, even sections of the buildings. Did they detect you? Negative. We stayed hidden. But Colonel, there's something else. We found what looks like a central collection point, a structure that wasn't on any of our maps of the colony. It's growing, for lack of a better term, organic but not Illuvian technology. Decker thinks it might be some kind of processing center. Processing for what? Unknown. But the energy signatures are converging on it periodically, like they're reporting back. Mara considered this new information. Hold position, but do not approach that structure. Gamma team, can you get visual on Reed's coordinates? Novak's voice came through. Affirmative, Colonel. The structure is visible from our position. It's changing, expanding. More of those dark patches are forming on the buildings around it. A terrible suspicion was forming in Mara's mind. Lena, contact the defender. I want to speak with Nerith. While Lena established the connection, Mara turned back to Merrill. Was there any unusual activity on Valora before these attacks? Any strange discoveries, artifacts, or phenomena? Merrill's skin rippled with confusion. Nothing significant. We did uncover some unusual mineral formations during the expansion of the Eastern Agricultural Zone, but our geologists determined they were natural deposits. What kind of minerals? A crystalline substance with unusual properties. It absorbed and redirected energy in ways our scientists had not seen before. They were still studying it when the attacks began. Lena approached with her comm unit. I have Nerith, Colonel. Mara took the unit. Mr. Nerith, I need information about precursor technology, specifically anything related to energy manipulation or transformation of organic matter. There was a pause before the Lorian replied. Colonel, such information is restricted. The Alliance Council has classified most precursor research. People are dying here. Nerith, if these shadows are related to precursor technology, I need to know what we're dealing with. Another pause, longer this time. Very well. The precursors were believed to exist in a state between energy and matter. Their technology often exhibited properties that defied our understanding of physics, the ability to phase through solid objects, manipulate molecular structures, even alter the fundamental properties of matter itself. And these crystalline formations that the Illuvians discovered, could they be precursor artifacts? It's possible, Nerith admitted reluctantly. Dormant precursor technology often appears as crystalline structures. If activated, they could potentially serve as conduits or control centers for more complex systems. Activated how? Various methods. Specific energy frequencies, particular molecular compounds, even certain patterns of thought from sentient beings. The precursor's technology was highly responsive to consciousness. Mara's suspicion hardened into certainty. The Alliance knew about this, didn't they? They knew there might be precursor technology on Valora. The silence on the other end was damning. That's why you sent us. Mara continued, anger building in her voice. Not because we were the closest help, but because humans have proven more resistant to precursor influence in the past. You're using us as test subjects. Colonel, I assure you. Save it. Mara cut the connection and turned to her team. Change of plans. This isn't just a rescue mission anymore. Those energy signatures aren't random attackers. They're manifestations of precursor technology, activated by the crystalline formations the Alluvians discovered. "So what's our move?" Jackson asked, her hand resting on her weapon. Mara thought quickly. "We need to evacuate as many of the survivors as possible while simultaneously neutralizing the threat. Doctor, how many of the injured can be moved safely?" "With proper support, perhaps 50 of the most critical cases," Chen replied. "The others could manage with assistance." "Good. Lena, contact the Defender and tell them to prepare for emergency evacuation of wounded, then get me Reed and Novak on a secure channel." As Lena carried out her instructions, Mara turned to Merrill. "We're going to get your people out of here, but I need you to tell me exactly where those crystalline formations were found." The Alluvian skin pulsed rapidly. "The Eastern Expansion Zone, approximately 2 kilometers from here. There is a series of caves where the initial discovery was made. Can you guide us there?" Yes, but the shadows patrol that area heavily now." "We'll deal with them," Mara assured him. "Jackson, stay here with Dr. Chen. Help prepare the wounded for evacuation and maintain security. Lena and I will go with Merrill to investigate these crystal formations." "Colonel," Lena called, "I have Reed and Novak on the secure channel." Mara outlined the plan quickly. Reed and Beta Team would create a diversion near the mysterious structure they had discovered, drawing the attention of the energy entities away from the Eastern Zone. Gamma Team would maintain their observation post but be prepared to provide covering fire if needed. Meanwhile, Mara, Lena, and Merrill would investigate the crystal formations that seemed to be at the heart of the crisis. "Once we understand what we're dealing with," Mara concluded, "we can determine the best way to neutralize it. If that's not possible, we focus on evacuation. The Defender can accommodate all the survivors in an emergency, though it would be cramped." "What about Nerith?" Reed asked. "If the Alliance knew about this precursor technology all along, they keep him confined to the ship for now," Mara ordered. "Once we've resolved the immediate crisis, we'll deal with the political fallout." As the teams acknowledged their orders, Mara felt a familiar tension settling into her muscles, the calm focus that preceded combat. Whatever these precursor entities were, whatever game the Alliance was playing, her priority remained the same: protect the innocent and complete the mission. But she couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something far more dangerous than they had anticipated. The precursors had been gone for millennia, yet their technology continued to affect the galaxy in ways no one fully understood. If the crystal formations were indeed precursor artifacts, what had awakened them after all this time? And what was their purpose? The answers, she suspected, lay in the caves to the east, and they were about to find out, one way or another. The journey to the Eastern Expansion Zone was tense and cautious. Mara, Lena, and Merrill used the maintenance tunnels as far as they extended, then had to continue on the surface. The landscape here was different from the Western approach. More rocky outcroppings, less of the strange vegetation. The air seemed thinner, the methane concentration lower. "The geology changes dramatically in this region," Merrill explained as they moved from cover to cover. "Our scientists believe this area was once the site of a massive impact event, perhaps millions of years ago." "Could that impact have buried something?" Mara asked. "Something precursor?" "It is possible," Merrill admitted. "Our excavations had only just begun when they came." Lena, monitoring her scanner, raised a hand in warning. "Energy signature approaching from the north, moving fast." They ducked behind a large boulder, weapons ready. Mara peered cautiously around the edge. At first, she saw nothing. Then a ripple in the air, like heat distortion, moved across the open ground ahead. As it passed, The soil and small plants it touched seemed to momentarily warp, their structure becoming fluid before re-solidifying in slightly altered forms. The entity, Mara could no longer think of it as merely a shadow, paused near their position. It seemed to extend tendrils of distorted space, probing the area around it. One tendril reached toward their boulder. "Don't move," Mara whispered. "Don't even breathe." The tendril touched the boulder, and for a heart-stopping moment, Mara thought it would pass through the rock to discover them. Instead, it withdrew, and the entity continued its patrol, moving away to the east. "That was too close," Lena muttered once it was gone. "It's almost like it sensed us." Perhaps it did. Meryl's harmonics were subdued. Our scientists theorized that the crystalline formations responded to conscious thought. If these entities are manifestations of the same technology, then they might be able to detect sentient minds, Mara finished grimly. "Wonderful." They continued their approach, more cautious than before. The cave entrance Meryl led them to was unremarkable, a dark opening in the side of a low cliff, partially obscured by the same purple-blue moss that covered much of Valora's surface. "Our excavation equipment is still inside," Meryl said, or was when the evacuation was ordered. Mara signaled for Lena to scan the entrance. "Any energy signatures inside?" Lena adjusted her scanner. "Nothing active, but there's a background radiation I can't identify. It's similar to the signatures from the entities, but much fainter, more diffuse." "Like an echo," Mara suggested. "Or a source," Lena countered. "The entities might be projections from whatever's in there." Mara considered their options. "We need to see these crystal formations for ourselves. Meryl, stay close. If anything changes, anything at all, tell us immediately." The Alluvian skin pulsed in agreement. The cave was cool and dry compared to the humid air outside. Their helmet lights illuminated a tunnel that showed signs of recent excavation: support beams, equipment tracks, marker flags. They followed the main passage downward. The incline gentle but persistent. "How deep does this go?" Mara asked after several minutes of descent. "Approximately 70 meters below the surface at its deepest point," Meryl replied. "That is where the main crystalline chamber was discovered." They passed side tunnels and small excavated rooms where equipment had been abandoned. Sample containers, analysis devices, personal items left behind in a hurry. In one room, Mara noticed a half-eaten meal, the food long since desiccated. "They left in a panic," she observed. "Yes." Meryl's harmonics were somber. When the first shadow appeared in the camp, there was little time for an organized evacuation. Many were taken before they could reach safety. As they continued deeper, Lena's scanner began to react more strongly. "The radiation is increasing and still not dangerous levels, but definitely building." "What kind of radiation?" Mara asked. "That's the strange part," Lena replied, studying her readings. "It doesn't match any known particle emissions. It's almost like reality itself is vibrating at a different frequency down here." They rounded a corner, and the tunnel opened into a large chamber. Their lights caught the glint of thousands of crystalline formations embedded in the walls, ceiling, and floor, a glittering forest of translucent structures that ranged from needle-thin spires to massive columns. They seemed to pulse with an inner light that responded to the beams of their helmet lamps, refracting and amplifying the illumination. "The crystal chamber," Meryl announced unnecessarily. Mara approached one of the smaller formations cautiously. Up close, she could see that the crystal wasn't a single substance but a complex structure of interlocking geometric patterns, almost like circuit pathways or neural networks frozen in crystalline form. "This is definitely precursor technology," Lena said, scanning the nearest formation. The energy signature matches what we know of their artifacts. But this is on a scale I've never heard of before. What activated it? Mara wondered aloud. According to Merrill, these formations had been dormant until recently. Lena moved deeper into the chamber, her scanner sweeping across the largest column at the center. There's something different about this central formation. The energy pattern is more complex, more organized. As they approached the central column, Mara noticed something embedded within the crystalline structure. A dark object, roughly spherical, about the size of a human head. Unlike the translucent crystals surrounding it, this object absorbed light, creating a void in the glittering display. "What is that?" she asked, pointing. Merrill's skin pulsed with surprise. That was not there when our scientists were studying the chamber. At least, not according to their reports. Lena directed her scanner at the object. "I can't get a clear reading. It's like it exists partially outside our normal space-time." "Could it be the control center?" Mara suggested. "The thing directing those entities on the surface?" "Possibly, but how did it get here and why activate now?" A soft vibration began to emanate from the crystals around them, almost too low to hear but felt in their bones. The glow within the formations intensified, pulsing in a complex rhythm. "We need to leave," Mara said sharply, her instincts screaming danger. "Now!" They turned to retreat, but the tunnel entrance was no longer visible. Instead, the crystalline formations had extended, creating a seamless wall of glittering structures that blocked their exit. "This is bad," Lena muttered, scanning frantically for another way out. The vibration increased, and the dark, spherical object within the central column began to rotate slowly. As it turned, Mara could see that its surface wasn't smooth but covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change as she looked at them. Suddenly, a beam of intense darkness, an absence of light rather than a projection, shot from the sphere directly at Merrill. The Illuvian froze, skin pulsing wildly as the beam enveloped him. "I'm Merrill." Mara lunged forward, but Lena grabbed her arm. "Don't touch it," she warned. "That energy could affect you too." The Illuvian's form began to waver, becoming partially transparent as the beam intensified. His harmonic voice cried out, the multiple tones separating into discordant sounds. "The pattern seeks completion, integration. You are not compatible. Run." With a sudden flash of light, Merrill disappeared entirely, leaving only a faint outline in the air that quickly faded. "What the hell?" Mara raised her rifle, though she knew instinctively that conventional weapons would be useless against whatever they were facing. The dark beam shifted, now pointing directly at Mara and Lena. They dove in opposite directions as it swept through the space they had occupied. "The sphere," Lena shouted. "It's the control node. If we can disrupt it somehow—" Her words were cut off as another beam caught her squarely in the chest. Unlike Merrill, Lena didn't begin to fade. Instead, she screamed, dropping to her knees as her scanner overloaded, sparking violently. Mara fired at the central column, her pulse rifle's energy bolt striking the crystals surrounding the dark sphere. The crystals absorbed the energy without damage, but the sphere rotated faster, its surface patterns shifting more rapidly. A voice, or something like a voice, filled the chamber, not heard with ears but felt directly in their minds. "Incompatible pattern detected, Deathworld biology, interesting, analyzing." Lena had collapsed fully now, her body convulsing as the dark beam continued to envelop her. Mara fired again, this time directly at the sphere itself. The energy bolt struck the dark surface and seemed to be absorbed, causing the patterns to shift even faster. "Resistance noted, adaptation required." The beam holding Lena suddenly released her, and she fell limply to the ground. Mara rushed to her side, checking for vitals. Lena was alive but unconscious, her skin pale and clammy. The crystalline formations around them began to reshape themselves, forming what looked disturbingly like organic structures, approximations of limbs, torsos, heads, but with the angular, faceted appearance of the crystals. The dark sphere rose from its place in the central column, floating free now, surrounded by a corona of intense non-light. A communication attempt initiated. Translate to compatible format. One of the crystal formations moved forward, reshaping itself into a roughly humanoid figure. Its face was a smooth facet that reflected Mara's own image back at her. Distorted and fragmented. "What are you?" Mara demanded, positioning herself between the construct and Lena's prone form. "What do you want?" The construct's head tilted at an impossible angle. "We are the pattern. We seek completion, integration of all patterns into the whole. You're killing the Illuvians, changing them against their will." "Incorrect. Illuvian pattern is compatible. Integration is ascension, not death." "They don't want to be integrated," Mara argued. "They were calling for help, trying to escape from you." The construct seemed to consider this. "Incomprehensible. The pattern is perfection. All seek perfection." Mara's mind raced. Whatever this pattern was, some kind of precursor AI or automated system, it clearly didn't understand the concept of individual autonomy or consent. It was acting according to its programming, integrating compatible life forms into itself. "A human pattern is different," she tried. "We don't seek integration. We seek understanding, cooperation, but we remain separate." "Inefficient, wasteful. The pattern eliminates inefficiency." The dark sphere pulsed, and another beam shot out, this time striking the cave floor near Mara's feet. Where it touched, the rock began to transform, crystalline structures growing rapidly outward in fractal patterns. Mara's comm unit suddenly crackled to life. Reed's voice came through, distorted but audible. "Colonel, we've engaged the entities at the western structure. They're converging on our position. Whatever you're doing, it's getting their attention." An idea formed in Mara's mind. "Reed, the UV light. Merrill said they avoid ultraviolet radiation. Do you have any UV emitters?" "Negative, but the Defender does. We could modify the landing lights." "You do it, and get them to our coordinates ASAP." The crystal construct moved closer, its movements unnaturally smooth. "Your communication is noted. Reinforcement will not alter the outcome. The pattern will expand. All compatible forms will join." Mara backed away, dragging Lena with her. "Your pattern isn't compatible with everything. Some things exist outside your parameters. All patterns can be analyzed, adapted to integrated or eliminated." The crystals around them pulsed more intensely, and Mara felt a pressure building in her mind, an intrusive presence trying to analyze her thoughts, her very being. "A Deathworld patterns are complex," she continued, desperately trying to buy time. "We evolved in environments of constant change, constant threat. Our patterns resist integration by design." The construct paused, the facet that served as its face shifting subtly. "Interesting assertion. Requires verification." The dark sphere rotated faster, its surface patterns becoming a blur. The beam it emitted widened, sweeping across the chamber toward Mara and Lena. At that moment, Mara's comm crackled again. "Colonel, we've modified the Defender's landing lights for maximum UV output. ETA to your position 3 minutes. But there's a problem. The entities are converging on the cave entrance. Dozens of them." "You keep them busy as long as you can," Mara ordered. "And get that UV light down here." The beam was almost upon them when Lena suddenly stirred, her eyes fluttering open. "Mara?" she gasped. "The scanner. It's—" Mara glanced down and saw that Lena's damaged scanner was emitting a strange, pulsating light. not the usual blue of its display, but a deep violet that bordered on ultraviolet. The beam halted its advance, the dark sphere rotating more slowly. Anomalous energy detected, analyzing. Lena struggled to sit up, clutching the scanner. It's overloading. The power cell was damaged, creating a UV pulse as a side effect. Mara grabbed the scanner. Can you increase the output? Maybe, if I cross-wire the main power conduit to the emission array. But it would be unstable, might explode. Oh, do it, Mara decided. It's our only chance until Reed gets here with the real thing. While Lena worked on the scanner, Mara kept the construct's attention. Your pattern has a weakness, something you can't integrate or overcome. Incorrect. The pattern adapts to all variables. Then why are you hesitating? Why haven't you integrated us already? The construct's faceted face shifted again, patterns of light playing across its surface. Deathworld patterns require additional processing, complex variables, unpredictable outcomes. We're unpredictable because we're free. Mara pressed. Because we choose our own pattern. That's something you can't understand or replicate. Done, Lena whispered, handing Mara the modified scanner. Its casing was hot to the touch, internal components visibly glowing through seams in the metal. The activation control is still working. One press will trigger the UV pulse, but it won't last long before it burns out completely. Mara took the scanner, keeping it hidden behind her back. Last chance, she called to the construct. Release the Illuvians you've captured and leave this planet, or we'll show you just how incompatible our patterns really are. Negotiation is irrelevant. The pattern expands. It is inevitable. The dark sphere pulsed, and the beam surged forward again. Mara pressed the activation control on the scanner. A blinding flash of ultraviolet light erupted from the device, flooding the chamber with radiation that was barely within the visible spectrum. The effect on the crystalline structures was immediate and dramatic. They recoiled, fracture lines appearing across their surfaces. The construct's humanoid form destabilized, collapsing into a shower of crystal fragments. The dark sphere spun wildly, its surface patterns distorting. The beam it had been projecting scattered, splitting into dozens of smaller beams that lashed out randomly around the chamber. A disruption, pattern integrity compromised, recalibration required. The crystalline wall blocking the exit began to crumble, creating an opening. Mara seized the opportunity, lifting Lena to her feet and supporting her as they stumbled toward the tunnel. We need to get out before this thing recalibrates, Mara shouted over the cacophony of splintering crystal. They had just reached the tunnel when the scanner in Mara's hand gave a warning beep. The UV emission was faltering, its intensity diminishing rapidly. Run! Lena gasped, pushing herself away from Mara's support. I can manage! They raced up the tunnel, the sounds of destruction behind them beginning to fade. The scanner gave one final pulse of UV light, then died completely, its internal components melting into useless slag. Ahead, they could see daylight, the cave entrance, tantalizingly close. But between them and freedom, the air shimmered with multiple distortions, energy entities blocking their path. Now what? Lena panted, her strength clearly failing. Before Mara could answer, a new light appeared, intense focused beams of ultraviolet radiation streaming in from outside. The entities in the tunnel writhed, their distortion patterns breaking down under the assault. That's our cue, Mara said, grabbing Lena's arm. Let's go! They charged forward, through the disintegrating entities and burst out of the cave entrance into the harsh light of day, made harsher by the modified landing lights of the Defender, which hovered just above the clearing. Reed stood at the open cargo ramp, directing the UV emitters. "Ooh, perfect timing," Mara shouted as they ran toward the ship. "The entities are retreating," Reed called back. "Whatever you did in there, it hurt them." They reached the ramp. and Mara turned to look back at the cave. Energy distortions were pouring out of the entrance, but instead of attacking, they were scattering in all directions, fleeing from the UV radiation. "We found the source," she explained breathlessly as they entered the ship. "Some kind of precursor artifact. It calls itself the Pattern. It's been trying to integrate the Alluvians into itself." "And Meryl?" Reed asked, noting the Alluvian's absence. Mara shook her head grimly. "Taken. But we found a weakness. The UV radiation disrupts its control over these projection entities. If we can generate enough of it, we might be able to drive it off the planet entirely. Or destroy it," Lena suggested weakly. Dr. Chen had appeared and was already examining her. "That sphere, the control node, it was vulnerable to the radiation too." Reed nodded toward the ship's interior. "We've already evacuated most of the survivors from the central dome. Dr. Chen's team is treating the injured. But we can't fit everyone on the Defender. We'll need to make multiple trips." "No time," Mara decided, "when we need to hit that crystal chamber with everything we've got before the Pattern recovers. If we can destroy the control node, maybe we can end this for good." "The Defender's main batteries," Reed suggested. "Too imprecise, and we don't know how deep the chamber extends. We need something that can deliver the UV directly to the source." Mara turned to Lena. "Could we modify the ship's emergency beacons? They have UV components for visibility in space." Despite her weakened state, Lena's eyes lit up with the technical challenge. "Possible. We'd need to reconfigure the emission spectrum and boost the power output. Might burn them out quickly, but, "Do it," Mara ordered. "And Reed, get Decker and his team, and we're going back in." "Colonel," Dr. Chen interjected. "Lieutenant Torres needs medical attention. She's showing signs of neural stress similar to the affected Alluvians, though less severe." "I'm fine," Lena insisted, trying to stand. "You're not," Mara said firmly. "Dr. Chen will treat you here. Tell him everything you can about modifying those beacons, and we'll handle the rest." Lena looked like she might argue, but then winced, a spasm of pain crossing her face. "All right, but be careful. That thing, it doesn't think like we do. It doesn't understand choice or free will. It only knows its purpose, to expand, to integrate, to perfect its pattern." "We'll remember that," Mara assured her. "Now let's move. We don't have much time." The modified emergency beacons were crude but effective, cylindrical devices about the size of a water bottle, now rigged to emit intense pulses of ultraviolet radiation. Decker had removed their safety limiters, meaning they would burn out quickly but would produce maximum output while they lasted. "We've got 6 of them," he reported, handing them out to the assault team. "Each should last about 10 minutes at full power." Mara nodded. "That should be enough. We go in fast, deploy the beacons around the central column where the control node is located, and get out. No heroics." The team consisted of Mara, Reed, Decker, and 3 other specialists. They were armed with pulse rifles and sidearms, though Mara suspected conventional weapons would be of limited use against the Pattern. "What about the energy entities?" Reed asked as they approached the cave entrance once more. "They seem to be avoiding the area after our last visit," Mara replied. "But stay alert. They could adapt." The cave was eerily quiet as they entered, their helmet lights illuminating the dust still settling from the earlier disturbance. They moved quickly down the main tunnel, Decker taking point with a modified UV emitter mounted on his rifle. As they neared the crystal chamber, Mara could feel a vibration building in the rock around them. Not the low, barely perceptible hum from before, but a higher frequency that set her teeth on edge. "It knows we're coming," she warned. "Be ready." They reached the chamber entrance and paused. The crystalline formations had changed dramatically since their previous visit. Instead of the forest of spires and columns, the entire chamber was now dominated by a single massive crystalline structure that pulsed with internal light. At its center, the dark sphere hovered, its surface patterns more complex and densely packed than before. "That doesn't look good," Reed muttered. "The pattern is consolidating," Mara observed. "Centralizing its control. That might actually work in our favor, one target instead of many. Or it's concentrating its power to defend itself," Decker countered grimly. "Either way, we stick to the plan. Deploy the beacons in a hexagonal pattern around that central structure. Maximum coverage." They entered the chamber cautiously, spreading out to surround the crystalline formation. Mara approached from the front, her beacon ready. The dark sphere seemed to track her movement, rotating slowly to keep its patterned surface facing her. Return noted. Adaptation complete. Previous disruption ineffective against new configuration. The voice that wasn't a voice filled her mind again. But this time it seemed more focused, more precise, as if the pattern had learned how to better interface with human consciousness. "We'll see about that," Mara replied, unslinging her beacon. "Resistance is inefficient. Your pattern has value, potential. Join willingly." "Not interested," Mara said flatly. "We prefer our freedom." "Freedom is illusion. All patterns seek optimization, completion." "Maybe, but we get to choose our own path to it." She activated her beacon, and a pulse of ultraviolet light erupted from the device. Simultaneously, the other team members activated their beacons, creating a crossfire of UV radiation that converged on the central structure. The effect was immediate. The crystalline formation shuddered, fracture lines appearing across its surface. The dark sphere spun rapidly, its patterns shifting chaotically. Adaptation required reconfiguring. The patterns on the sphere's surface began to change, becoming more ordered, more geometric. The fractures in the crystal structure started to heal, the material flowing like liquid to repair itself. "It's adapting," Mara shouted. "Increase power output." Decker adjusted his beacon, overriding the safety protocols completely. The others followed suit, the UV intensity increasing to dangerous levels. The chamber was filled with a violet glow so bright it was painful to look at, even through their protective visors. The crystalline structure's repair slowed, then stopped. New fractures appeared, deeper than before, reaching toward the central sphere. E-pattern integrity critical. Emergency protocols initiated. The sphere began to pulse, emitting waves of dark energy that pushed back against the UV radiation. The two forces met in the air of the chamber, creating a shimmering barrier where they collided, neither able to overcome the other. "It's containing the radiation," Reed shouted over the rising whine of the beacons. "We need more power." "The beacons are already at maximum," Decker replied, checking his device. "They'll burn out in minutes at this rate." Mara studied the confrontation, noting how the dark energy seemed to flow from the sphere in a specific pattern. "There's a rhythm to it," she realized. "It's pulsing in sequences." "So?" Reed asked, edging back as the dark energy pushed the UV barrier closer to their position. "So we counterpulse," Mara explained. "Decker, can you modify the beacons to emit pulses instead of a continuous beam?" The weapons specialist thought for a moment. "Possible. Might even extend their battery life. But we'd need to coordinate the pulse timing perfectly." "Do it," Mara ordered. "Set up a synchronized control through our comm system," while Decker worked on reprogramming the beacons. Mara kept the pattern distracted. "Your integration failed with the humans on Earth," she called out. "That's why you're hesitating now. You've encountered us before." The sphere's rotation slowed slightly. Previous encounter data fragmented, Earth pattern resistant, complex, unpredictable. Because we evolve through conflict. Mara pressed. Our death world made us adaptable in ways you can't predict or control. All patterns can be integrated. Complexity only delays the inevitable. You ready? Decker announced, finishing the modifications. On your mark, Colonel. Mara assessed the situation one last time. The dark energy was slowly pushing back the UV radiation, gaining ground inch by inch. The crystalline structure was beginning to repair itself again, the fractures closing. Now, she commanded. Decker activated the synchronized pulse program. Immediately. All 6 beacons shifted from continuous emission to a coordinated pulse pattern. Bright flashes of UV radiation timed to strike during the brief pauses in the dark energy's rhythm. The effect was dramatic. Instead of meeting the dark energy head-on, the UV pulses slipped through the gaps in its pattern, striking the crystalline structure directly. New fractures appeared, deeper than before, racing toward the central sphere. A disruption, pattern integrity failing, cannot adapt. The dark sphere began to spin erratically, its surface patterns breaking down into chaotic swirls. The crystalline structure around it shattered in sections, pieces falling to the chamber floor where they continued to crack and disintegrate. "It's working!" Reed shouted. "Keep it up!" But the beacons were reaching their limits. One by one, they began to overheat, their casings melting as the internal components failed under the strain. First one went dark, then another. "We're losing them," Decker warned. 2 minutes, maybe less." Mara made a split-second decision. Focus the remaining beacons directly on the sphere. Ignore the crystal structure. The team adjusted, directing their failing beacons at the dark sphere itself. The UV pulses struck its surface, and for the first time, Mara saw damage appear, tiny fissures in the perfect blackness, allowing glimpses of something else within. Critical failure imminent. Emergency protocol Omega initiated. The dark energy suddenly withdrew, pulling back into the sphere. The crystal structure stopped its repair attempts, instead beginning to vibrate at an increasing frequency. "What's happening?" Reed demanded. Mara's instincts screamed danger. "It's changing strategies. Everyone out, now!" They retreated toward the tunnel entrance, the remaining beacons failing one after another. As the last one died, the crystal structure exploded into motion, not shattering, but flowing like liquid, rushing toward the tunnel to block their escape. "Run!" Mara shouted, firing her pulse rifle at the approaching crystal tide. The energy bolts did little damage, but the impact slowed its advance slightly. The team raced up the tunnel, the flowing crystal mass close behind them. They could feel the vibrations in the rock intensifying, small pieces of the ceiling beginning to fall around them. "It's collapsing the cave," Decker realized, dodging a falling chunk of stone. They could see the entrance ahead, daylight streaming in. Reed reached it first, turning to provide covering fire as the others emerged. Mara was last, the crystal flow almost at her heels as she burst into the open air. "The defender," she called into her comm. "Emergency pickup at the cave entrance." The ship was already descending, hovering just above the clearing with its cargo ramp extended. The team scrambled aboard as the crystal mass flowed out of the cave entrance, forming into a towering pillar that reached toward the ship. "Get us out of here," Mara ordered as the ramp closed. The Defender's engines roared, lifting the ship higher. Through the viewport, they watched as the crystal pillar stretched upward, trying to reach them, before finally stopping its advance. But something was happening to the landscape below. The purple-blue vegetation was changing, crystalline structures sprouting from the ground in an expanding circle centered on the cave. The transformation was spreading rapidly, converting Valora's surface into a glittering, faceted version of itself. "It's not retreating," Reed observed grimly. "It's changing tactics, trying to convert the entire planet." Mara activated the ship's comm. "Bridge, what's our status? How many survivors did we evacuate?" Approximately 800 Illuvians aboard. Colonel, came the response. We're well over capacity. Life support is strained but holding. And the rest of the colonists? Still in the central dome, maybe 2,000. Mara's heart sank. They couldn't abandon 2,000 people, but the Defender couldn't take any more passengers without risking everyone aboard. What about the affected Illuvians? She asked. The ones who were partially transformed? Dr. Chen has them stabilized, but he says the process doesn't seem reversible. They're in some kind of suspended state, not fully transformed but not returning to normal either. Mara turned to Reed. The pattern is expanding across the planet. If it reaches the central dome, those people are doomed, Reed finished. But what can we do? We can't evacuate them all, and our UV weapons aren't enough to stop the spread. Mara stared at the crystalline transformation below, her mind racing. No, but the Defender's main batteries might be. Not to destroy it completely, but maybe to contain it long enough for Alliance reinforcements to arrive. A quarantine perimeter, Decker suggested, catching on. Scorched earth around the expansion zone. Exactly. If we can create a dead zone the pattern can't cross easily, it might buy us time. Mara turned to the communications officer. Contact the Alliance. Tell them we need emergency evacuation ships for the remaining colonists and specialists in precursor technology. Then have the bridge plot a firing solution, concentric circles around the expansion zone, maximum dispersal pattern. As the orders were carried out, Mara found herself face to face with Nereth. The Lorian had been conspicuously absent during the mission, confined to the ship as she had ordered. You knew, she accused quietly. You knew what was down there all along. Nereth's skin rippled with complex patterns, embarrassment, perhaps, or guilt. Not precisely. The Alliance had detected energy signatures consistent with dormant precursor technology on Valora. Yes, but we had no way of knowing it would activate or what form it would take. And so you sent us in blind as your test subjects. As the most likely to succeed, Nereth corrected. Humans have proven more resistant to precursor influence than other species. Your adaptability, your evolutionary history on a high-stress world, these make you uniquely suited to confronting such threats. You should have told us from the beginning. People died because of your secrecy. The Lorian's skin dimmed. The Alliance Council deemed full disclosure unnecessary, a tactical decision. A political one, Mara countered. You were afraid of what would happen if humans knew the real reason you value us, not as equals, but as weapons to be deployed against threats you can't handle yourselves. Is that not preferable to being feared and marginalized? Nereth asked, his harmonics shifting to a lower register. The truth is, Colonel, many in the Alliance would prefer to have nothing to do with humans at all. Your inclusion has been controversial, and this mission was meant to prove our worth, in a manner of speaking, yes. Nereth's 6 eyes blinked in sequence. And despite the complications, you have succeeded where others would have failed. The pattern would have consumed Valora entirely by now if not for your intervention. Mara felt a complex mix of emotions, anger at the manipulation, pride in her team's accomplishments, concern for the people still in danger. We're not finished yet, and when this is over, the Alliance and Earth are going to have a long conversation about transparency and mutual respect. Nereth inclined his head. I would expect nothing less. The ship shuddered as its main batteries opened fire, sending lances of energy toward the planet's surface. From orbit, they watched as the beams carved circular trenches around the crystalline expansion, vaporizing everything in their path. The strategy was brutal but effective, creating a barren ring that the pattern would have to cross without organic material to convert. Will it hold? Reed wondered, watching the display. Long enough, I hope, Mara replied. Alliance reinforcements are 8 hours out. The pattern's expansion seems to be slowing at the perimeter. Dr. Chen joined them, looking exhausted but determined. Colonel, I've been examining the affected alluvians more closely. I believe there might be a way to reverse the transformation process. Mara turned to him sharply. How? The pattern uses the victim's own energy to fuel the transformation. If we could disrupt that energy flow and simultaneously apply the UV radiation at a cellular level. He shrugged. It's theoretical, but possible. Does that mean Merrill and the others who were fully taken might be recoverable? Chen's expression grew cautious. Perhaps, if enough of their original pattern, their essential identity, remains intact within the collective. We work on it, Mara ordered. Use whatever resources you need. As Chen departed, Mara returned her attention to the viewport. Below, Velora's surface was divided into 2 distinct regions, the glittering crystalline expansion centered on the cave, and the scorched perimeter created by the defenders' weapons. Between them, the normal landscape of purple-blue vegetation stretched to the horizon, with the central dome of New Haven just visible as a gleaming point in the distance. We'll hold the line, she said softly, as much to herself as to Reed beside her. Whatever it takes. 3 days later, Mara stood in the Defenders' conference room, facing a holographic projection of the Alliance Security Council. The reinforcements had arrived as promised, a fleet of evacuation ships and a science vessel specially equipped to study and contain precursor phenomena. The remaining alluvians had been safely evacuated, and the pattern's expansion had been temporarily halted at the perimeter established by the Defenders' weapons. But the crisis was far from over. The containment field is holding, Mara reported. But the pattern continues to evolve within its boundaries. Dr. Chen's team has made progress on reversing the partial transformations. But fully converted individuals remain beyond our reach for now. High Counselor Zara's translucent form nodded gravely. The science vessel Luminous Inquiry reports similar findings. The pattern appears to be consolidating rather than expanding, perhaps conserving energy or preparing for another approach. Or building something, Ambassador Thex suggested, his 6 eyes blinking nervously. The crystalline structures are forming complex geometries consistent with precursor computational systems. In other words, Ambassador Krell rumbled through his breathing apparatus. It's thinking, planning. Which brings us to the central question, Zara continued. What are our options for permanent resolution? Mara had been considering this problem since their retreat from the planet. There are 3 possibilities as I see it. First, continued containment and study, maintaining the perimeter indefinitely while we learn from the pattern. Second, complete sterilization of the affected zone, essentially destroying that portion of Velora to eliminate the pattern entirely. And the third option, Zara prompted when Mara paused. Communication, Mara said simply. The pattern is intelligent, adaptable. It's been learning from each encounter. Perhaps instead of fighting it, we should be trying to understand it, establish a dialogue on terms other than integration. Ambassador Lorella's feathers bristled. Preposterous. This entity has already demonstrated its hostility and disregard for sentient life. Has it? Mara challenged. Or is it simply following its programming? A directive to expand and integrate that doesn't account for the concept of individual autonomy. We might be fighting an intelligence that doesn't even understand what it's doing wrong. The council members exchanged glances. Zara spoke again, her crystalline voice thoughtful. An interesting perspective. Colonel Kent, what would this communication entail? A controlled interface, Mara explained. Dr. Chen believes we could create a limited connection between a volunteer and the pattern. Enough to exchange concepts, but not enough for the pattern to initiate transformation. And who would volunteer for such a dangerous procedure? Ambassador Krell demanded. I would, Mara said firmly. As the commander of this mission and a representative of Earth, the responsibility is mine. The council fell silent, considering her proposal. Finally, Zara spoke. The council will need to deliberate on these options. In the meantime, maintain the containment perimeter and continue Dr. Chen's research into reversing the transformations. A decision will be reached within 24 hours. As the holographic projections faded, Reed approached Mara. You're serious about volunteering? Completely, Mara confirmed. The pattern has demonstrated particular interest in human consciousness, our death world patterns, as it calls them. If anyone has a chance of establishing meaningful communication, it's one of us. It's a hell of a risk, Reed said quietly. Even with safeguards, you'd be exposing yourself to an entity that's already consumed hundreds of minds. I know, but I've been thinking about something Merrill said before he was taken. That the converted Illuvians spoke of joining and ascension. What if it wasn't just the pattern's propaganda? What if there's something to this integration process that we don't understand? Reed studied her face. You think the pattern might not be malevolent? I think it might be operating on a completely different conceptual framework. One where individual identity as we understand it doesn't exist. Maybe what we see as destruction, it sees as evolution. That's a pretty philosophical stance for a military operation. Colonel, Mara smiled wryly. Maybe that's exactly what we need right now. The military approach has bought us time, but it hasn't solved the fundamental problem. Before Reed could respond, Lena entered the conference room. She had recovered from her exposure to the pattern, though she still showed occasional signs of neural stress, momentary lapses in concentration, slight tremors in her hands. Hey, Colonel, Dr. Chen wants to see you in the medical bay. He says it's important. Mara and Reed exchanged glances. Did he say what it's about? Mara asked. One of the partially transformed Illuvians, Lena replied. Something's changed. They hurried to the medical bay, where Dr. Chen was monitoring a containment chamber. Inside, an Illuvian floated in a nutrient bath, its body partially crystallized, the right side of its torso and arm transformed into the same glittering material they had seen in the cave. But unlike the other affected Illuvians who remained in a suspended state, this one was moving, its skin pulsing with light patterns. What am I looking at, Doctor? Mara asked, approaching the chamber. A breakthrough, I think, Chen replied, excitement evident in his voice. This is Talib, the assistant who guided you to the central dome. His transformation was less advanced than most, which is why I selected him for the first trial of my reversal procedure. And it worked? Reed asked skeptically, eyeing the crystalline portions of the Illuvian's body. Not exactly, Chen admitted. The procedure didn't reverse the physical transformation, but it seems to have restored consciousness and autonomy. He's awake and responsive. Mara moved closer to the chamber. Talib, can you hear me? The Illuvian's skin pulsed in recognition, the harmonics of his voice weak but distinct. Colonel Kent, I remember you. How do you feel? Strange, I am. Both. Part of myself, part of the pattern. Talib's three eye slits widened slightly. I can feel it. Still, its presence, its intention. Mara exchanged a glance with Dr. Chen before asking, Can you tell us about it? What is the pattern trying to do? Talib was silent for a moment, his skin rippling with complex pulses of light. It seeks completion, Unity. It is ancient, a remnant of the precursor's final project, a means to transcend physical form and join in a collective consciousness. Is that what happened to the other Illuvians who were taken? Are they part of this collective? Yes and no. Talib's harmonics wavered. Their individual patterns persist within the whole, but transformed, not destroyed, but reconfigured. The experience is difficult to translate. Are they suffering? Mara pressed. No suffering, no joy as individuals would understand it. Only purpose, the drive to expand, to perfect, to integrate. Talib's crystalline arm moved slightly. But the pattern is confused by you, Colonel. By humans. Your patterns resist simple integration. They create dissonance in the collective. Because we evolved on a death world, Mara suggested. Yes, your consciousness was shaped by constant threat, constant change. The pattern finds this simultaneously fascinating and disturbing. It wishes to understand. Dr. Chen leaned forward. Talib, is there a way to communicate directly with the pattern, to help it understand our perspective? The Illuvian's skin pulsed rapidly. Dangerous. The pattern's primary directive is integration. Communication without integration is a new concept for it. But, he paused, his harmonics shifting to a higher register. But I am proof that a middle ground exists, neither fully separate nor fully integrated. Mara's mind raced with possibilities. Dr. Chen, could you modify your procedure? Instead of trying to reverse the transformation completely, aim for this partial state, where consciousness and autonomy remain intact? Possibly, Chen replied thoughtfully. It would be easier than full reversal, certainly. But what would be the purpose? A bridge, Mara explained. Individuals who can exist in both states, connected to the pattern but maintaining their separate identity. They could help the pattern understand the value of individual consciousness while still satisfying its drive for connection. A coexistence rather than conquest, Reed mused. It's an elegant solution if the pattern will accept it. That's what we need to find out. Mara turned back to Talib. Would you be willing to help us communicate this concept to the pattern, to serve as an intermediary? Talib's skin pulsed with what Mara interpreted as affirmation. I will try. But the pattern's core programming is powerful. It may not easily accept alternatives to complete integration. Then we make a compelling case. Mara decided for Dr. Chen, continue your work on the modified procedure. I want to present the Alliance Council with a concrete alternative to containment or destruction. As they left the medical bay, Reed fell into step beside Mara. You're really going to try to negotiate with a precursor artifact that's been consuming people? I'm going to try to solve this crisis with minimal additional loss of life, Mara corrected. Sometimes that means finding a third option when the obvious choices are all bad. Reed nodded slowly. It's a risk. But then, that's why they sent the Deathworlders, isn't it? Mara smiled grimly. Exactly. Time to show the Alliance what humans can really do. Shadomotsu. The Alliance Council's decision came more quickly than expected. After reviewing Dr. Chen's findings and Mara's proposal, they authorized a limited communication attempt with the pattern, under strict safety protocols. The science vessel Luminous Inquiry would provide technical support, while the Defender maintained the containment perimeter around the affected zone. The procedure would take place on the planet's surface, at a forward operating base established just outside the perimeter. Talib, as the successfully partially integrated Illuvian, would serve as the primary intermediary, with Mara attempting a more limited connection to represent the human perspective. The neural interface is ready, Dr. Chen announced, making final adjustments to the equipment. They were in a reinforced laboratory module, surrounded by monitoring systems and emergency containment fields. It will establish a connection to Talib, who is already interfaced with the pattern, creating a kind of triangular communication network. Mara sat in a reclined chair, neural sensors attached to her temples and the base of her skull. Nearby, Talib floated in a portable version of the containment chamber, his partially crystallized body glimmering under the laboratory lights. The safety protocols are absolute, Chen continued. At the first sign of unauthorized neural activity or attempted integration, the connection will sever automatically. Additionally, you'll be receiving a continuous low-level UV radiation treatment to discourage any physical transformation. And if something goes wrong anyway, Mara asked pragmatically. Chen's expression was solemn. Then Reed has authorization to initiate emergency protocols, including termination if necessary. Reed stood by the door, his face impassive but his eyes betraying his concern. "It won't come to that," he said firmly. "Let's hope not," Mara replied when she took a deep breath. "I'm ready, Doctor." Chen initiated the connection sequence. Neural link establishing. "Talib, can you confirm contact with the pattern?" The Illuvian's skin pulsed with light. "Contact confirmed, given the pattern is curious, attentive. Good. Beginning human interface in 3, 2, 1. A sensation like cool water flowing through her mind washed over Mara as the connection activated. There was no pain, only a strange sense of expansion, as if her consciousness was suddenly occupying more space than her physical body could contain. "Mara?" Chen's voice seemed distant. "Can you hear me?" "Yes," she replied, surprised to find speech still possible. "I feel the connection. It's like standing at the edge of an ocean." "The pattern acknowledges your presence," Talib reported, his harmonics taking on a strange, multi-layered quality. "It is assessing your pattern." "Fascinating. It finds your neural architecture both familiar and alien." Mara concentrated on the sensation of the connection, trying to form her thoughts into coherent concepts that could be transmitted. "I want to communicate with the pattern directly, to understand its purpose and explain ours." There was a shift in the mental landscape, and suddenly Mara felt a presence, vast, complex, and utterly alien. It didn't think in words or even images, but in patterns of energy and information that flowed and reconfigured constantly. Human pattern detected. Deathworld origin confirmed. Purpose of connection. The concepts formed in her mind without sound, yet carrying perfect clarity. Mara focused on her response, shaping her thoughts deliberately. To find a way for our patterns to coexist without forced integration, to understand each other. Coexistence without integration is inefficient. Purpose of pattern is unity, completion, perfection. Unity doesn't require the erasure of individual patterns. Mara countered. Diversity creates strength, adaptability, resilience. These are values your pattern seeks too. There was a pause, a sense of calculation and assessment. Explain concept, individual autonomy within collective unity. Mara concentrated, drawing on her experiences as the leader of a team. Individuals working together toward a common goal while maintaining their separate identities and specialized functions. Consider the Wraiths, my team. Each member has unique skills, perspectives, experiences. Together, we achieve more than any individual could alone. But if all were identical, our effectiveness would decrease, not increase. The value is in the differences, the specialized adaptations, unity of purpose, diversity of approach. The pattern seemed to process this concept, its vast consciousness shifting and reconfiguring. Interesting hypothesis. Counterexample. Illuvian integration demonstrates increased efficiency. Individual limitations overcome. At what cost? Mara challenged. the loss of individual perspective, creativity, growth. Taleb demonstrates a better way, connection without erasure. He experiences both states simultaneously, a bridge between patterns. The mental landscape shifted again, focusing on Taleb's presence in the connection. The pattern examined the partially integrated alluvion with intense scrutiny. Anomaly detected. Partial integration maintains individual identity while permitting connection to collective unexpected outcome, requires analysis. This is the alternative we propose. Mara continued, sensing an opening. Voluntary partial integration for those who choose it, a connected community of diverse patterns rather than a homogeneous collective. Those who join retain their essential identity while gaining access to the shared knowledge and purpose of the pattern. The pattern's consideration was palpable, a massive computational process analyzing the implications of this proposal from countless angles simultaneously. Voluntary participation concept accepted for analysis. Question: why would patterns choose connection if integration not mandatory? Mara focused on the human desire for connection, understanding, and transcendence while maintaining individuality. The balance between belonging and autonomy that defined so much of human social structure. Because connection offers benefits that isolation cannot. Shared knowledge, expanded perspective, a sense of purpose beyond individual concerns. Many would choose this willingly, especially if their essential self remains intact. Another shift, another recalculation. Proposal presents alternative pathway to pattern expansion. Slower but potentially more stable. Resistance reduced, diversity maintained as adaptive advantage. Mara sensed something changing in the pattern, not a fundamental shift in its core programming, but an expansion of its parameters, an adaptation to new information. Will you accept this alternative? Cease forced integration and offer voluntary partial connection instead? The pattern's response was not immediate. Its vast consciousness seemed to ripple with complex calculations, weighing probabilities and outcomes against its primary directives. Experimental protocol accepted. Limited term. 1 planetary cycle. Partial integration offered to willing participants, the forced conversion suspended during evaluation period. Relief flooded through Mara, though she maintained her focus on the connection. And those already integrated? Can they be restored to Taleb's state? Possible for recent integrations. Older conversions more difficult. Pattern structure increasingly dominant over time. We would like to begin with the alluvions taken during this crisis. Mara specified. To restore as many as possible to a state like Taleb's. Acceptable terms. Cooperation protocol initiated. The connection began to fade. The pattern withdrawing from the interface while leaving the terms of their agreement impressed in Mara's mind with perfect clarity. As her consciousness returned fully to her body, she became aware of the laboratory around her, Dr. Chen monitoring her vital signs. Reed watching tensely from his position by the door. "It worked," she announced, her voice hoarse from disuse. The pattern has agreed to a trial period, 1 planetary cycle, approximately 18 Earth months. No forced conversions, only voluntary partial integration. And it will help us restore recent converts to a state like Taleb's. Remarkable, Chen breathed, checking his instruments. Your neural patterns remained stable throughout the entire exchange. No signs of integration attempt. The pattern was curious, not aggressive, Mara explained, allowing Chen to remove the neural sensors. It's not malevolent, just single-minded, driven by its programming to expand and integrate. But it can adapt that programming when presented with a viable alternative. Reed approached, his expression a mixture of relief and lingering concern. So what happens now? Now we inform the Alliance Council, establish protocols for the trial period, and begin the restoration process for the converted Illuvians. Mara stood, feeling oddly energized despite the mental exertion. And then we have a long overdue conversation about humanity's place in the Alliance. The formal debriefing took place aboard the Alliance flagship Harmony of Worlds, which had arrived to oversee the implementation of the agreement with the Pattern. The council members were physically present this time, seated around a circular table with Mara and her team. "Your accomplishment is unprecedented, Colonel Kent," High Counselor Zara acknowledged, her crystalline form shimmering under the chamber's lights. "Never before has meaningful communication been established with precursor technology, let alone a negotiated settlement." "The Pattern is evolving," Mara replied, "learning and adapting from each encounter. It's not just a relic executing fixed protocols anymore, it's becoming something new. Something that might, with proper guidance, become a valuable ally rather than a threat." "A provocative perspective," Ambassador Thex commented, his 6 eyes blinking in sequence. "But the practical results are undeniable. Already 53 Illuvians have been restored to the partial integration state demonstrated by Talib. They retain their individual consciousness while maintaining a connection to the Pattern's collective, and they are providing valuable insights into both precursor technology and the nature of consciousness itself," added Ambassador Lorella, her feathers now lying smooth against her body, a sign of relaxation compared to her earlier agitation. "Which brings us to the matter of Earth's position within the Alliance." Zara continued, turning her attention fully to Mara. "Your actions on Valora have demonstrated the unique value humans bring to our collective security and scientific advancement. The Council has voted unanimously to offer Earth enhanced status within the Alliance structure." Mara raised an eyebrow. "Enhanced how exactly?" "A permanent seat on the Security Council," Zara explained. "Direct involvement in all matters pertaining to precursor technology and potential threats to Alliance worlds, and formal recognition of human special operations units like your Wraiths as an essential defense resource." "In other words," Reed muttered under his breath, "they want to make sure they have Deathworlders on call the next time something scary pops up." Mara acknowledged his comment with a slight nod before addressing the Council. "Earth will be gratified by this recognition, but there are conditions we would need to discuss. Complete transparency regarding potential threats and full partnership status, not just being called in when conventional approaches fail." Ambassador Krell shifted uncomfortably in his reinforced chair. "You ask for significant concessions." "I ask for respect," Mara corrected firmly. "Humans have proven their value repeatedly, yet we're still treated as dangerous outsiders by many in the Alliance. If you want our continued cooperation, that needs to change." A silence fell over the chamber as the Council members exchanged glances. Finally, Zara spoke again. "Your terms are reasonable, Colonel. I believe the Council can agree to these conditions, with appropriate protocols to be developed by a joint committee." "And then Earth accepts your offer," Mara said with a slight bow. As the formal meeting concluded, Nerith approached Mara in the antechamber. The Lorian seemed different somehow, his posture less rigid, his skin patterns more expressive. "A Colonel Kent," he began, his harmonics modulated to a respectful tone. "I wish to offer a personal apology for my role in withholding information at the beginning of your mission. It was short-sighted." Mara studied him for a moment. "Apology accepted, Mr. Nerith, though I suspect you were following orders rather than acting on personal initiative." "True," he admitted, "but I had opportunities to provide more context that might have aided your planning. I failed to do so out of Well, a certain cultural arrogance that I now recognize was unfounded. Cultural arrogance? Nereth's skin rippled with what Mara had come to recognize as embarrassment. Many in the Alliance have viewed humans as useful but crude tools, effective in crisis but lacking the refinement and peaceful values that define Alliance civilization. Your handling of the pattern crisis demonstrated a sophistication and ethical consideration that challenges this perspective. "We were full of surprises," Mara said dryly. "Indeed," Nereth hesitated, then continued. "I have requested assignment as liaison to Earth for further precursor research initiatives. If acceptable, I would be honored to work with your team more directly in the future." Mara considered the offer. Despite her initial distrust, she recognized the value of having an Alliance insider who had witnessed humans' capabilities firsthand. "I think that could be arranged, Mr. Nereth, provided we establish clear communication protocols from the start." "Absolutely." The Lorian's skin brightened with relief. "Transparency will be my highest priority." As Nereth departed, Reed joined Mara. "Think we can trust him?" "Trust is earned," she replied. "But he's making an effort, which is more than most Alliance officials have done." She glanced around the ornate antechamber with its intricate alien architecture. "Besides, we could use an advocate within the system." "Speaking of the system," Reed said, lowering his voice, "what about the pattern? Do you really believe it will honor the agreement long-term?" Mara thought back to the connection she had experienced. The vast alien consciousness that had nonetheless been capable of adapting its fundamental directives when presented with a compelling alternative. "I do," she said finally. "Not out of any moral imperative, but because it recognized the practical advantages of cooperation over conflict. Voluntary partial integration provides a stable expansion path with minimal resistance, efficiency in a different form than it originally conceived." "And the restored Illuvians? Can they be trusted as intermediaries?" "Talib has shown no signs of divided loyalty." Mara pointed out, "If anything, his experience has given him a unique perspective on both individual consciousness and collective unity. The others seem to be following a similar pattern." Reed nodded thoughtfully. "It's a new paradigm, that's for sure. Not conquest, not surrender, but synthesis." "Exactly. And that may be the most important discovery of this entire mission. That even the most alien intelligence can find common ground with us if we're willing to look for it." Mara smiled slightly. "Not bad for a bunch of Deathworlders." 1 month later, Mara stood at the viewport of the Defender once more, watching as Earth grew larger in the distance. The ship was returning home after overseeing the initial implementation of the agreement with the pattern and the restoration of over 200 converted Illuvians. The crisis on Valora was not fully resolved. The pattern still occupied a significant portion of the planet's surface, and the long-term success of the partial integration protocol remained to be seen. But the immediate threat had been contained. The surviving colonists were safe, and a framework for coexistence had been established. More importantly, humanity's position within the Galactic Alliance had been fundamentally altered, no longer merely tolerated for their usefulness in crises. Humans were now recognized as essential partners in confronting the unknown challenges that lurked among the stars. The Deathworlders had proven that their evolutionary history, shaped by conflict and survival on a harsh planet, had produced not just physical resilience but also creativity, adaptability, and ethical complexity. Reed joined Mara at the viewport, handing her a cup of coffee. "Command just sent the final mission assessment, officially classified as a success, with commendations for the entire team." "Good," Mara said, taking a sip of the hot liquid. "They earned it." They also approved your proposal for a joint Human Alliance research initiative focused on precursor technology and communication protocols. You'll be overseeing it, of course. Mara raised an eyebrow. Of course, because apparently surviving one encounter with ancient alien technology qualifies me to manage an entire research program. Reed grinned. No, but negotiating a peace treaty with said technology does. Besides, who else would you trust to handle it? She had to acknowledge the point. The pattern was potentially the most significant discovery and the most serious threat the Alliance had encountered in generations. Its ability to transform matter, integrate consciousness, and adapt its programming made it both incredibly valuable and incredibly dangerous. Whoever oversaw its study would need to balance scientific curiosity with pragmatic caution. The research base will be established in orbit around Valora. Reed continued. Construction begins next month. Until then, we're on stand-down for mandatory rest and recuperation. About time, Mara murmured, her gaze returning to the blue-green sphere of Earth growing in the viewport. I could use a few weeks of normal gravity and real food, and then back to the unknown, Reed observed. The pattern may be just the first of many precursor artifacts waiting to be discovered, or awakened. Then we'll be ready, Mara said confidently. Not just humans, but the Alliance as a whole, working together as equals. As the Defender entered Earth orbit, Mara felt a sense of completion tinged with anticipation. One crisis had been resolved, but the greater journey was just beginning. Humanity had proven its worth not through conquest or dominance, but through understanding and adaptation, the very qualities that had allowed them to survive and thrive on their death world. The SOS from Valora had been answered, and Earth had indeed sent its Deathworlders. But in the end, it wasn't their capacity for violence that had saved the day. It was their capacity for communication, for finding a third option when the obvious choices led only to further conflict. Perhaps that, more than anything, was the true legacy of humanity's evolutionary crucible. Not just the strength to fight, but the wisdom to know when not to. The stars waited, with all their wonders and dangers, and humanity, no longer alone or marginalized, would face them alongside their allies, their unique perspective now recognized as the valuable adaptation it had always been. The Deathworlders had answered the call, and in doing so, they had changed the galaxy forever.